8, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello, everybody out there in YouTube. We are the Middle-Aged Guys, or at least two of the Middle-Aged Guys. I am the Reverend.
And I'm Graymouse 1.
And we're going to be taking a moment on talking about this, well, the grand brouhaha, the first big security hole that was discovered for 2018. Actually, a set of security exploits called Meltdown and Spectre. Okay, and the thing that really makes these two particular security holes or these security issues important isn't the fact that you're on a PC, isn't the fact that you're connected up to the internet or all those other things. It's just that these particular security flaws are inherent to the most popular set of processors in the world, all right, the Intel processors, which have been pretty much numero uno in not only the end user space, but also in the industry space for folks who are using any sort of PCs for commercial reasons, industry reasons, and stuff like that. Okay, all right, Intel processors are most likely going to be in there. And this set of exploits also influences ARM processors also. So in the grand scheme of things, not so much the AMD or ATI part of the industry, but mostly Intel processors. And here's the thing: this particular exploit or this security flaw is applicable up to all the processors going back up to the last 10 years of commercial processors that have been put out. All right. The general thing about Meltdown and Spectre, all right, is that, okay, excuse me for not being an expert, but as somebody who works in the industry within compatibility and has also worked within host chipset compatibility for companies like Western Digital and other stuff like that, when it comes to the understanding of the workings of PC components, I would confidently say that my understanding is a lot higher than your general end user. All right. Now, with these two particular exploits, what they did was that they basically found a way to scrub the information that was there on the low-level cache, the L1 and L2 cache that is has been part of every Intel processor that's been put out, even before the multi-core or the Core Duo series is put out, all the way back in like 2005. Okay, so basically, with these two exploits, these folks had figured out that, hey, look, I can scrub the processor data that's still sitting there in the L2 or L1 cache of your processor that you know is going to be called up, whenever you make certain critical operations, like, I don't know, signing in for secure websites, stuff like that, okay? Maybe all the stuff that your PC automatically processes through, but because of the way your operating system is set up, it's always available there on the physical actual memory of the processor itself, okay? Now, when we're talking about this, okay, this is an issue that can be fixed through software, but it is inherently a hardware issue, okay? It is so much a hardware issue that if we're going to sit there and draw a comparison or an analog to, let's say, I don't know, the human body, this is like someone finding out a way to sit there and, I don't know, stimulate a way for you to go ahead and start scratching your nose by plugging into the nerves, in your big toe, all right? That's literally what's going on here, okay? So, yeah, with this particular one, this is pretty much a big issue that a lot of people have said is going to affect Intel very, very big, especially since that, hey, look, you can have software fixes to go ahead and scrub over and make things more secure, but the initial performance degradation estimate was something of like, all right, well, the folks who are running Intel processors, or at least Intel processors for the last 10 years that are still on going through stuff, it's not going to be surprising that they see a hit of at least 30%. All right. And that's the news that came out for everybody. All right. Now, you, Graymouse, I know last year we just went ahead and we built you a gaming PC. All right. And I was right there, and I was sending you through, consulting with you, saying, okay, these are the components that you want to go ahead and put together. This will work better than this, considering the amount of money that you're spending. What are your thoughts as somebody who went ahead and, just recently, not just recently, but, not too long ago entered, in as one of the members of the PC Master Race? What did you think about, once you heard all this stuff here?
Well, I mean, I've been a member of the PC Master Race for a while. I just haven't had it rigged to be an official member to throw my badge out there or anything. But yeah, it comes as a surprise to me, actually. I mean, but the thing is, like you were saying earlier, I mean, I would rather have a more secure computer or GPU than complain about having 30% performance going down, less. I mean, to me, it's nothing. I definitely would rather have a more secure computer. Because the way you made it sound, let me use this human analogy. I don't want nobody laying a tracing paper over my brain and tracing with a pencil and receive memories from me. No, no. I don't want people to. No, I don't want people to do that. So yeah, I'll take the hit. But the thing is, though, it's not all the way across the board 30%. Certain chipsets will have more than others. And like you mentioned before, you said the AMD chipset, they're coming to find out that that's vulnerable as well. Not as vulnerable as the Intel ones, but it's still, I think you opened up pretty good about saying that pretty much in the last 10 to 15 years of chips is who are vulnerable.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, generally speaking, the ARM processors are what's known as the Acorn RISC machines. All right. Those are ones that aren't seeing the same sort of vulnerabilities because they handle data differently. All right. But AMD themselves are seeing a little bit of influence on this.
Yes.
So much so that when there are security patches that are going out via Windows, Mac OS, Linux, or anything else like that, yes, there will be patches that explicitly address AMD operations and everything like that. But because what's going on here is that there's, like you said, with the whole tracing paper and everything else, basically there are these exploits that give these particular programmers and these folks who are fishing for this information, they're able to sit there and glean information, secure data on a very base hardware level. This is stuff that passes through the system bus. All right, this is shit that just it travels along. If, like I said, if it was a human body, it's information that's traveled along nerve impulses. All right, that basically once it's used, it's gone. But with CPUs or central processing units and like their low level cache, like their L2 or L1 cache, this is information that there are remnants of it that are still left over because it's stuff that you use over and over in your daily lives. All right, just signing into the internet itself, just opening up a web browser, being able to connect to the internet itself entails a set of login credentials that, guess what? I remember as a guy who, from the dial-up era, had to sit there and put in a username and a password.
Yeah.
Now you don't even you don't even do that. All right. No. But it still exists. It's just handled in a separate piece of software than what you would normally see back then when you had to deal with dial-up.
Well, to add salt to the wound, per se, I hate using that analogy, but this update that they're putting out, it's bricking systems. I know it's new. The patch is new, and there's still some bugs within the patch itself. But people have been reporting since this came out that they're looking at 60 to 75% performance loss on that, and I don't think that those guys are. I don't think the patch was intended to lose that much performance for the patch.
I know as far as it goes, there was reports that let's see here, the Meltdown and Spectre update patches were bricking AMD systems.
Yes,
but I think what was up is that there was certain documentation that was provided to Microsoft that related to how AMD processors actually handle their data on that particular base level. This is really kind of like, all right, this is really stuff that's on the base level. Like, okay, in comparison to Intel, how does AMD handle their processors? Okay, it's like the whole thing where it's like, oh, hey, look, you come to the path. There's a left turn and there's a right turn. All right, AMD, they turn left instead of turning right. Okay, but it still ends up the data ends up at the same place at the end of the day. All right, but because of that, like those particular details being not really made available to Microsoft, that yes, there were issues that were showing up for AMD systems. All right.
So, are people out there still on Windows 7 32-bit? Is that an issue as well, or are they putting that patch out for the?
Well, generally speaking, all right, where you're gonna see the most vulnerability is if you're on a 32-bit system, and we're talking pre-Windows, Windows 8. All right, so Windows Vista, Windows XP. All right, and Windows 7. Okay. Yeah. Let's just be honest. Windows 7 is a great operating system. Shit, I still use it myself, but it's almost 15 years old. All right. When it comes to that decade and a half that it's been out on the market, that is more than a lifetime for any hacker that's out there to sit there and figure out a way to go ahead and get into the more intimate details that of information that's stored within the operating system. So, and then the thing also is that, ever since Windows Vista, all right, the 32-bit flavor of the operating system has never been the default. Hasn't been the default operating version
for a long time.
For a long time, for easily more than a decade. All right, so
everybody's on 64-bit. So
yeah, because the thing is that with the way that hardware goes and everything else, with all the stuff that is more applicable when it comes to processing power, the amount of RAM that you have, the amount of cycles, the teraflops that you process for your GPU and everything else. All right, it's a lot friendlier to a processor that's on a 64-bit processing base to go ahead and address over a 32-bit processing base. All right. Likewise, operating systems, they work better on a 64-bit processing base or a 64-bit kernel over a 32-bit kernel because the existing hardware that's out there is optimized toward a 64-bit kernel. It's not optimized toward a 32-bit kernel. All right.
Well, maybe that's where they started, like you mentioned earlier. Maybe that's where or I wouldn't say hackers, but programmers or whatever that find exploits. That's probably where they started to work and see if it's vulnerable. And then they figured out, like, wait a minute, the 64-bit is just as vulnerable.
Well, the thing with this particular one, the folks who went ahead and they found Meltdown and Spectre, the two exploits that allow them to go ahead and glean this secure information and everything else, is that it's kind of funny that they all came to like the same conclusion around the same time. Okay, the truth of the matter is this: is that when you have hackers and they're looking at the system, whether it's 32-bit or 64-bit or Mac OS or Linux or Windows or whether or not it's Windows 7 or any of the numbered versions that are out there, okay, Windows, Mac, Linux, whatever is out there and everything else, is that, the longer that an operating system is out on the market, the longer time that they have to sit there and actually fuck around with things on the back end. That's just how it is. All right. You know, the more poking and prodding that they have, that they're able to do, the more vulnerabilities that they're able to find. All right. With this particular one, with the initial 30% estimation of performance degradation, a lot of the analysts that went ahead and they actually went on record for that. They were like, wait a minute, this is just based off of a Linux model, and this is really, really early. Okay, I can tell you through experience at my job, because I work in the compatibility lab for my company and everything else. The amount of degradation as far as performance goes for these particular, for the security patches that cover the Meltdown and Spectre exploits, all right, the amount of performance degradation really matters from application to application, also hardware rig to hardware rig, all right? If you have somebody who's running on a brand new we have prototype i9s, okay? They're not even on the fucking market, okay? You know, we're looking at those. I mean, this is shit that you probably have seen show up on the CES floor just last week. All right, we already have that in our particular lab. You know, with stuff like that, just because of the way that the processors work and everything else, yeah, the performance degradation as far as frames per second, load times, and latency and other things like that is really, really negligible. All right, but if you're looking at, like, I don't know, an Intel Core 2 Duo, all right, that's 2.4 gigahertz. That was the shit back in 2006. Yes, there's going to be a huge fucking processor and performance load. It doesn't matter what fucking game you're playing or anything like that. You're going to see a huge issue with that, because guess what? It's just not set to go ahead and run multiple threads the same way. Yep. It's not set to go ahead and run huge chunks of memory and data the same way or anything like that. Yeah, of course you're going to see a huge difference in comparison to the i9s that we have over there at the fucking lab. All right? That's just what happens. And, you know, for the folks who are out there watching this video, if you care about it, all right, or if you're somebody who's wondering about it, yeah, your mileage is going to vary depending on your hardware that you have, all right? But guess what? This is part of the reason why you spent more than $1,000 on a capable gaming PC and everything else, all right? Hopefully, if you're somebody who's done that, you know, just recently, then after the security patches that Microsoft or Apple puts out for their operating system, you know, these particular degradations or in performance and stuff like that, hopefully it'll be nominal. All right.
I would.
And
think
if you're
in the last,
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that I think for the last, if you've built your rig for the last 3 years, I don't think you're going to have that much of a degradation. But the thing is, though, I mean, if your rig is over 10, 15 years, and I know people that have computers that are that old, yeah. You're going to see significant degradation on performance.
And that's something that realistically, if you think about it, is something that's going to accompany the fact that, yeah, you're running the older hardware, all right? But look, all right, let me just say this right now. Let me put this in front of everybody right now. And the thing is that, you know, Graymouse is snickering at the idea because he knows what I'm going to get into, all right? If you are the asshole, all right, who can sit there and say that, on my brand new i7 with 64 fucking gigs of DDR5 RAM on a full speed, SSD, 1 terabyte hard drive at 4.58 fucking gigahertz, overclocked on water. I dropped from 400 fucking frames per second to 200. I'm gonna say this: fuck you, okay? Really, all right? Fuck you up the ass with a red hot fire poker, all right? You are not
$10,000 on the GPU.
Yeah, I know, but you're also not the general end user. And guess what? If your shit is running 60 frames a second or better, you are at more than a playable or competitive level. All right, let's just let me just say that right away. All right, well, okay. If you're some asshole who's out there saying, "Oh yeah, I was able to run at 300 frames per second, and now my shit runs at 120. Oh my god, it's unplayable." Fuck you, all right? Literally, fuck you up the ass, all right? I'm not apologizing for anybody, all right? Fuck you up the ass. Because the thing is that, guess what? All right? For most publishers out there, if they're putting out a game and it's able to sit there and hit a stable 30 frames per second, it's playable. Mm-hmm. Real life and history within the industry shows that if you have something running at 30 frames per second, all right, that it can create a more than acceptable gameplay experience. Yeah. Guess what? The Nintendo 64, which showed up in 1996 and everything else, it showed up as one of its launch games, Mario 64. All right? It never hit over 30 frames per second. And many times it only moved at 20 frames per second.
I was going to say 20, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Same thing with Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, which a lot of motherfuckers sit there and say, "It's the greatest Zelda of all time." Bullshit. All right. It runs at 20 frames per second. All right. GoldenEye at its best runs 20 frames per second. It's lucky, and many times if you're playing multiplayer, to go ahead and actually display more than 15 frames per second. Right? So if you are one of these bastards, all right, if you were one of these PC elitist assholes, all right, who's sitting there saying, "Oh yeah, anything under 200 frames per second is unplayable," all I have to say is a hearty fuck you, all right? Fuck you. Twice, 3 times over. Up the ass with a red hot fire poker, all right? That's just stupid, all right? You went ahead and you spent thousands of dollars on kick-ass hardware to go ahead and future-proof yourself, for games coming forward and everything else. Guess what? This shit comes out now. Meltdown comes out. Spectre comes out. It affects components sitting on the bus line of your fucking of your system, all right? This is shit that is... Look, if I was somebody... If this is me, like... If I was Meltdown or Spectre, all right, and I wanted to affect you, I would literally be on your back, needling into your fucking spinal column, all right, at the base of your goddamn skull, okay, to get out of your brain. That's how this shit works, okay? All right, and you're sitting there, you're still telling me that you're still running it at a performance level where you can run with the Olympians during a fucking marathon. All right, consider what you're saying here, all right, really. Okay, I don't have very much sympathy, especially when we go ahead and we put it into those particular aspects.
It's obvious that you have no sympathy for the guys who run the top performance, top hardware on their PC. Well, and the thing is, though, I'm not defending them, but I do understand where they're coming from. They did spend a lot of unnecessary money on those type of hardware, and to have that being reduced to 50% what it was before. I understand that if I spent $10,000 on something and I got tires on a car or whatever. No. Here's the thing. It's not that particular analogy. All right. Look, I can live in Alaska. All right. And it can be the dead of winter in a hurricane, and I can own myself a fucking Ferrari. All right. If I can't sit there and run out on the highway at 220 miles per hour because it's fucking pitch black in a goddamn in a fucking blizzard, well, guess what? That's just how life is. All right, I'm still in a goddamn Ferrari. True. It doesn't. Yeah. That's one thing they got to realize is that it's not changing the fact that you still got the top of the line shit in your rig. Yeah, and that's the thing, Which guess what? Already outperforms a standard, which already, even at its degradation, still outperforms a Joe Smo Smuckatelli who has a generation or 2 generation past your chipset that you got right in your system now. So yeah, exactly.
Instead of me flying off the road at 20 miles per hour, I'll fly off the road at 200 miles per hour. That's what the fucking happens, all right? But guess what? When it comes to a lot of that stuff, you know, with this particular one, especially Meltdown and Spectre and everything else, you know, this is one of those things where, all right, it's an issue that pops out that's outside of the control of publishers, all right? It's outside of the control of Microsoft. It's outside of the control of Apple. It's outside of the control of Linux, all right? And then you have the individual publishers who go ahead and they have their actual games and everything else. It's outside of their control also, okay? What we have to do as, you know, as somebody who works with a publisher, well, our responsibility is to make sure that, look, when they implement the security updates to go ahead and bring this stuff up, so Meltdown and Spectre is not something that happens every other fucking day for you as an end user, all right? We have to make sure that it doesn't break past the acceptable playable threshold, all right? Than what is normally out there, all right?
Which you just said is 30 frames per second. And most people with a PC rig, they're at 100 to 120 frames per second.
No, I'd say most of them are at 60 frames, all right? And depending on what they're running. In fact, majority of them, because of the way that the games are actually set up by default, are only running 60 frames. Even if their rigs are capable of doing more, unless they've changed their settings. All right. Yes, I see you out there sitting there saying, "But I went ahead and I changed my performance settings and make sure that it's uncapped." Yes, I know. All right.
I was going to say, I mean, I do that all the time too. So
okay, look, but generally speaking, most games that are out there, they're going to sit there, they're going to cap you at 60 frames per second. Guess what? Generally speaking, biologically speaking, most people cannot see the difference on that. Okay? I will tell you that yes, there is a measurable difference when you're sitting there, you're actually playing the game. All right. And yes, that can make the difference competitively if you're playing over, multiplayer against one person or another. Shit, for the company that I work for, our bread and butter, our money is, relies on that shit, So yeah, it's the sort of thing that we fucking pay attention to. But yeah, with Meltdown Spectre, this is shit that nobody had control of. All right. And the thing is that, there are people like Linus Torvald and other motherfuckers. Like Linus Torvald is the guy who created Linux. All right. He was like, well, maybe, people should stop accepting from the Intel that they're just going to go ahead and put out a piece of shit product that's going to be broken like this, like they have for the past 30 fucking years. Well, where it's like, well, look, Mr. Torvald, not to be an asshole, but you can make an OS all you want. It's still dependent on the hardware that's running on the bus, the system that you're there. Hey, you could bitch about that and you can sit there and try to push, fucking processors that don't even have a market hold all you want. That doesn't fix the issue that's out there. All right. It doesn't address the fact that 90% of not only end users, but industry users, folks that are, I don't know, Amazon hosting up web services, Google going ahead and hosting up, web services and shit like that. It doesn't address the fact that 90% of their infrastructure is beholden to this type of software, beholden to this type of hardware that in turn carries these particular exploits. All right.
And the thing too is that the fact that this exploit has just been found. It took them how long to fucking figure that out? So for him to blame it, I wouldn't say he blamed it, but it kind of sounded that way.
Well, Linus Torvald had some pretty choice words for the Intel engineers and shit like that, which guess what? Up to a point, I actually understand and I actually agree with, all right? But again, him sitting there and saying, hey, look, I guess the only option that people will have is to sit there and to settle for the piece of shit products that Intel is pumping out, generation by generation, year by year, and everything else like that. Look, motherfucker, regardless of whether or not somebody's running, Windows, Mac OS, or Linux, it's still going to be dependent on that actual fucking hardware. Linus can go ahead and he can keep on bitching like that, or he can sit there and contribute to an actual performance-based
problem. Yeah,
an actual performance-based fix or address the problem that way. But he didn't. All right. So
one thing too, what I find interesting, what you just mentioned before, is that people that have continuously on servers, online servers. I'm thinking government here. I mean,
yeah,
that's a huge problem, because I mean, that's our secret. That's our national secrets on these servers that are connected to these AMD chips, these Intel chips. Yeah, they've got to get that fixed.
Mostly Intel. Let's just be honest. Mostly Intel. All right. And the thing is that what I wish a lot of these enthusiastic gaming nerds would sit there and realize is that, guess what? So what if you're making 20% fucking frames per second when you're playing fucking Counter-Strike? All right. Mm-hmm. And so what if you're not able to sit there and get I don't know. You're not getting half as many fucking headshots as you would during a fucking match as you would expect. That shit, I understand it's measurable, but it's trivial. All right, completely trivial. All right, I would be more worried about the fact that people are able to sit there and glean. Oh, on the low level cache, we've got all of your user accounts and all of your fucking passwords for all of your critical things that you do, including banking. I don't know. Applying for credit and shit like that, I would be more concerned about that, and that's where these particular security fixes and stuff like that. Look, before all is said and done, performance to your PC, because of changes that are being made on the operating system level, is going to become worse than it becomes better. All right, let's just say that right now. Is it always going to be 30%? No. From my own experience and from my work experience and everything else, no, that does not always apply. All right. But if you think about it, would you rather have that or have all of your intimate, secure information ready for any other Joe hacker to go ahead and run through and say, oh, I've got Meltdown 2.3 version 2.3, to go ahead and glean over your 10-year-old fucking, Intel Core 2 Duo 2.4 gigahertz fucking processor, all right, that you're running on Windows, Windows 732 still, all right. Look, would you rather have all of your shit ready to go ahead and be exposed to the world for people to rob you blind of your not only your money but of your identity, or are you going to sit there and say, hey, look, this is something that I'm going to have to deal with. Guess what? Other people have it worse. This is something that everybody's going to have to fucking deal with until not just the next generation of Intel chips come out, but the ones after that come out that will fully address all this bullshit. I mean, myself, yeah, it sucks. But look, I'll let Windows do its update thing. All right. So what if Killer Instinct doesn't sit there and say that it's running at 240 fucking frames per second? If it's sitting there and it's telling me that it's running at 170, I'm fine. All right? Literally, I am fine. All right? I'm not playing online anyways, okay?
Well, the sad part about this whole thing is that an attack can happen, you won't even know that it's there. It's not detectable.
Exactly. As far as these particular exploits, Meltdown and Spectre goes, guess what? When it fucking happens, you're not going to figure out until much, much later after it's fucking happened.
For a reason.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to this, all right, look, if you're watching this particular video up until this point, yeah, I know we rambled on and everything, but guess what? I have more than half a fucking bottle of fucking Bird Dog in me right now. Which started, I think, about 2 hours ago. All right. Look, if you come up until this point, thank you for watching this up until this point. But I'm going to advise you, as a professional working for a game publishing company. All right. I'd rather suffer the performance hit than I would the financial hit. You know, if somebody steals my fucking identity or steals access to my fucking my bank accounts. Really.
So are people actually freaking refusing this update? I mean, is Microsoft and Apple are they forcing an update to where in order for you to go online?
Here's the thing, you know, anybody who's out there with a modern operating system can sit there and turn automatic updates off. And guess what? I understand you. I know where you're coming from, all right? I completely fucking agree. But when it comes to this particular one, you know, this one right here, this is one where you want, hey, look, if Microsoft is going to sit there, gonna get their hands dirty to take care of it, let them get their hands dirty to take care of it. If Intel is going to go ahead and they're gonna sit there and they're gonna try to get their hands dirty, take care of it, let them take care of it. All right. The fix right now, all right, is not perfect, but guess what? The potential consequences of not fixing, you know, fixing that security issue
is great.
It's so vast, it's so dire that, you know what, the loss of 20% or 30% of your frames per second on your favorite competitive game, it's worth it to the point where it doesn't compare, really. You know, yeah. And I think that's pretty much where we're going to go ahead and we're going to end this particular one up. I know this was an impromptu one, and we kind of ended up rambling all over the place. I really do apologize for that. Like I said, I'm rather drunk right now, let me just put it like that. But, you know, when it comes to all of this, folks, if you're familiar with the Meltdown or Spectre exploits, and you're familiar with the fixes that Intel has put out for Microsoft, Mac, Linux, and all of that other stuff, you know, we'd like to know what your thoughts are on it. You can go ahead and tell us by leaving us a comment below. All right. While you're at it, you can go ahead and mash on that like button. Or if you think I'm a lazy fucking sloppy asshole right now who's drunk on camera, because I am, you can go ahead and you can dislike this this video. I don't blame you for that. But if you really like what we're doing here, whether or not it's conversation with myself and Graymouse, conversation with Graymouse and Theme, whether it be about tech or movies or video games or any other geeky stuff, if you really like that, I suggest you go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I suggest you subscribe to the channel, all right, and turn on those notifications, because then you'll know whenever we go ahead and drop out a brand new video. I think we're going to go ahead and wrap this up at this point, right, Graymouse?
Yes, sir, especially when the 2-letter and 3-letter words start getting confused.
Yeah, you know, when the 2 and 3-letter words turn into 4 and 6-letter fucking words, yeah, it doesn't help out in the long run. All right. With that, you know, look, thank you for watching this all the way up until this point. You know, like I said, with every video, it doesn't matter if you agree or disagree with us. If at any time at all, you know, you listen to anything that we go ahead and we offer out here, you stop, you think about it, and it actually causes you to consider what we're putting out. That's a win. Yeah, that's a win in our case. We've done our job a lot better than you could ever fucking imagine. Yes, all right. With that, thank you for watching this video up until this point. I am the Reverend.
And I'm Graymouse 1.
Thank you very much, folks out there in YouTube. We will see you later.